Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Let's first begin with your doubts. So, quickly post your doubts. We solve them and then we proceed. We will be in a position to finish off SA-300 today. Okay, if you're clear with everything, let's begin. Let's quickly revise SA-300, whatever we have done till now, and then we proceed with the next part of the standard. Uh, we were doing SA-300, which is planning an audit of financial statements. Why do you plan an audit? Audit is planned to conduct the audit in an effective manner. What is the meaning of the word effective manner? It means timely and efficient manner, which means time पे भी खत्म होना चाहिए और ढंग से भी audit होना चाहिए. I gave you the example earlier that I will conduct a very good audit for you, but it will take 2 years to finish the audit off. Will not work because the audit has to be in a timely manner. If I say that I'll finish the audit within 10 days, but it is not conducted efficiently, again that will create a problem. So audit has to be effective, which means it has to be done in a timely and efficient manner. Who should be involved in the audit? Of course, the engagement partner will be involved, but the other key members of the engagement team should also be involved in planning of the audit. Mainly the people who are going to execute the audit should also be involved in planning the entire audit for you. The next point says what are the considerations that are required to be involved in an audit planning. The first step, and we prepared the notes also for this, so I would like to bring to your attention the notes that we prepared. The question is, what are the considerations involved in an audit plan? First, we must prepare an audit strategy. The audit strategy which will help us to decide the scope, timing and direction of the audit. मतलब क्या क्या हमको cover करना है, what is the time in which we will be completing the audit, and what are the steps involved in completing the audit. Now, this audit strategy, this scope, this timing and direction will become your base for the audit plan. Based on this, you can proceed with your audit plan. However, there are four important points that we need to take care when we formalize the overall strategy. The first important point is we will identify the characteristics of the engagement. For example, uh, if we talk about tax audit, so we have to first understand that Form 3CD is to be prepared. Now, this will help you understand the entire process and the entire scope that needs to be a part of the tax audit. If you talk about company audit, so first you're identifying the characteristic of the audit. What is the audit that you're conducting? That is to be required. That is to be identified in the first place. Second, you will try to understand the reporting objectives. मतलब जो आपको report करना है, आपका क्या format है, उसके क्या contents है, वो भी आपको planning stage में पता होने चाहिए. So that you try and accumulate that information from today, so that when you prepare the report, you have all proper information required to prepare the report. Third, you will ascertain the factors which are significant to direct the audit team. So if you are aware of certain factors, if you have communicated with the client and he brings some points to your attention, then those are the crucial points that you need to convey to your audit team. And finally, after understanding the entire entity, after understanding the assessed risk, you will then decide the kind of resources that you need to allocate to this audit. Resources in the terms of nature, timing and extent of resources that will be required to conduct the audit. Are you getting it? So 4 important points is: first, you will identify the characteristics. Second, you will ascertain the reporting objectives. Third, you will ascertain the factors that are required to direct your team. And finally, you will understand the kind of resources that are required to complete this audit work. After that, we did next important question, which was write a short note on audit planning and what should be included in an audit plan. Now, short note on audit plan is exactly same to our first question. Why do we prepare an audit plan? To conduct the audit in an effective manner. The word effective again means timely and efficient manner. However, before you do anything, or before beginning the audit, you must obtain the knowledge of the client's business, which means you must first understand their accounting system, understand the accounting policies that they have adopted, also understand the internal control procedures. So at the first place, you will obtain knowledge of the client's business in terms of accounting policies, accounting systems, and internal control. Once you understand this, then you will decide based on your judgment how much degree of reliance can be placed on the internal control. And we understood this yesterday, that if you can place more reliance on the internal control, then the audit procedures will comparatively be lesser, and vice versa. After this, you will determine and program the nature, timing, and extent of your audit procedures to be performed. So point number 2 and point number 3 are linked. The degree of reliance on the internal control will decide upon the extent of your audit procedures to be performed. Then you will coordinate the work amongst your team members. That is the most important part. That is the allocation of work. So if you come to know that a particular client has some technical aspects of GST that it has to comply, then you will select some member from your team who is competent to understand GST and conduct the audit in an efficient manner. So first, it is important to understand the client, and then based on that, you will allocate the staff accordingly. If you come to know that that indirect taxation, international taxation is something that the client needs to comply, then you need a staff who can properly understand and execute the audit in terms of international taxation. And finally, the most important part and very important true or false question for the exam. It says plan should be further developed and revised as necessary during the course of audit. So I discussed with you yesterday that once a plan is developed does not mean you have to stringently stick to a plan. The plan needs revision as the audit progresses. So when the audit progresses, you would have anticipated that purchases will go smooth and then you will finish off the purchases in 2 days. But it may so happen that on the first day you find a lot of queries in purchase, which means furthermore checking is required. So you will revise your audit plan and allocate more time to purchases. Similarly, it may so happen that you would have decided that sales will take a lot of time, but on the first day you find that sales is absolutely smooth and there are no queries at all. Then the time required for sales uh, will be comparatively reduced. So this is the kind of revision which is always required when you prepare an audit plan and execute it. Then we did the fifth question, which was again a very important question. It had 13 points. It says what matters are to be covered by the auditor for developing his audit plan. So there are 13 very important points that are required. And we listed all those 13 points because I told you this is an important exam question, has been asked a couple of times in the exam. The first point that you need to understand before you conduct the audit is SA-210, the terms of audit engagement and the statutory requirements pertaining to the audit. So that's the first thing you will have to take into account कि हमारे स्कोप में क्या क्या कवर्ड है और स्टैट्यूट हमें क्या कहता है ऑडिट में कवर करने के लिए. Second, the form and content of the report and other communications that you're going to make during the audit. Third, what are the applicable laws and regulations? Fourth, what are the accounting policies that are adopted and any changes if they have been made by the management? Any new pronouncement of ICAI, whether that new pronouncement is applicable or not. Identifying the areas having significant audit risks. So during your initial stage of the audit or during while understanding the internal control, you can identify the areas that are having significant audit risk. Then you will decide the materiality level. Based on that, you will decide how much can we rely on the internal control, on the accounting system, and then you will decide upon the detection risk. Now I explained to you the relationship between internal control, accounting system, and detection risk. Right, I'll again quickly give you a summary of the same. If you can rely more on the First, you must understand what is the meaning of detection risk. Detection risk means a risk that the auditor is unable to detect material misstatements in the financial statements, which means that if the internal control is strong and if the accounting system is strong and the auditor places reliance on the internal control, which means that auditor trusts the internal control. When the auditor is trusting the internal control, the audit procedures will reduce. Why? Because the control based on which the accounting system has been followed is trustworthy. So automatically the auditor will check lesser number of transactions. If the auditor checks lesser number of transactions, more transactions go unchecked, and then the detection risk would be high. So there is an inverse relationship between reliance on internal control and the detection risk. On the other hand, if the internal control system is weak, now when the internal control system is weak, the auditor will not place reliance, the auditor will check more. When the auditor checks more, the transactions that go unchecked are less, automatically our detection risk will be lower. Then we understood the next 2 points as a combined point, that is using the work of another auditor, internal auditor, and an expert. Where the word another auditor means there are two types of auditors, where a company has a lot of branches to be for which the audit is to be conducted, where the head office is known as the principal and the other branches are known as the branch. So we define it this way, that the auditor conducting the audit of the head office is known as the principal auditor, and the auditor conducting the audit of the various branches is known as the component auditor. Right now, you have to understand that the branch books of accounts will get combined with the head office books of accounts. So the head office books of accounts that will combine the branch office accounts, the head office auditor has the right to use the work of another auditor, that is the component auditor. So he can decide to what extent the work of the another auditor is to be used, and then accordingly he can place reliance on them. One more important point that I want to bring to your attention is that the auditor is allowed to use the work of another auditor. However, the auditor is answerable for whatever opinion he is giving. So the auditor cannot say that it is not my opinion, I have used the work of another auditor. You are given the choice to use the work of another auditor, but the responsibility still remains of the principal auditor. Next, you have using the work of an internal auditor. So then we decided there are various types of audit. Two primary audits are statutory audit and internal audit. Statutory audit means an audit that we are conducting in accordance with the provisions of any law. So a statute tells you to come to conduct the audit in a particular manner, and for compliance of certain statute, that is known as a statutory audit. And when an organization wants internal appraisal and wants to improvise upon its systems, and then it calls the auditor, that is known as an internal auditor. Now usually the scope of an internal auditor is wide and the scope of a statutory auditor is narrow. Now when the scope of a statutory auditor is narrow, which means he has lesser time in which the audit is to be conducted, that means the statutory auditor can use the work of an internal auditor, because technically both of them are conducting audit on the same books of accounts. Only the objective of the audit is different. So in this case, the statutory auditor can place reliance on the work of the internal auditor. Then using the work of an expert means so many times a chartered accountant will not be well versed with a lot of technical topics pertaining to information technology, pertaining to science background. So as I discussed with you, suppose if we have to go and conduct the audit of a steel industry. Now there are so many types of steel, including there are 2 or 3 types of stainless steel. Now the grade of steel will decide upon the value of the steel. Now, if you do not know how to identify a pure stainless steel and a regular stainless steel, then you will have to blindly rely on what the management tells you. And that is the place where management can manipulate. So in that case, SA-620 gives you an opportunity to utilize the work of an expert. Who is an expert? Any person having good technical and practical knowledge about any subject except accounts and audit is known as an expert. Why? Because you chartered accountants are expert in accounts and audit. So apart from accounts and audit, anyone who is an expert in any field will be called as expert as per the definition of SA-620. Then we have already done SA-299 joint auditors. So just in case if you have joint auditors, how will you allocate the work? That is also to be decided at the planning stage. And then your staffing requirements. So looking at the size and nature of the audit, you will decide your staffing requirements. And finally, after all these points are done, the 13th point is that you will document your overall audit plan. Right, most important question and a frequently asked exam question, question number 5. What are the matters to be considered by the auditor for developing an audit plan? Right after that, we go to the last question. To what extent documentation is required? So auditor has to document 3 important things. The first one is the overall audit strategy. The second one is your audit plan. And finally, any significant changes that you make in the audit engagement or in the overall audit strategy and the audit plan. And of course, the reasons for making such plan. Everything needs to be properly documented as per SA 300. Now, I am sure you all are now clearly aware about the importance of documentation because we have already done SA-230 audit documentation. Audit documentation is one of the most important tools that the auditor has to protect himself when someone charges him or her with negligence. So audit documentation is very important, and audit planning needs to be documented properly in order to execute it further. This brings you to the end of the technical part of audit planning. Then we move to the general discussion on audit planning, where we first understood the meaning of the term audit program. Audit program is nothing but a detailed plan. A detailed plan for what? For how will we apply the audit procedures in the given circumstances. An audit program will give you 2 important things. It will give you a set of instructions कि ये चीजें आपको चेक करनी है और इतनी इस तरह से चेक करनी है. And it will also give you appropriate techniques that you will adopt for accomplishing your audit objectives. So audit program will give you 2 things. One is a set of instruction, and the other is it will give you appropriate techniques to be adopted to accomplish your audit objectives. Any audit program is framed keeping in mind the nature, size, and composition of the business. Of course, your dependability on the internal control and the scope of work. And as I've already discussed earlier, audit program provides you with a set of instructions, and it will also help you to control the proper execution of the work. So if you have an audit program, the person who is supervising the audit can properly control the execution of work of the audit. Right? So this is what we have done till now in audit program. I am still giving you 2 minutes to quickly have a look if you have any doubts. If you have doubts, let's solve that first, because the next part you will be able to understand only if these basics are clear. Okay, so I have one doubt which says, when audit strategy is the base of an audit plan, then why is it to be documented separately? Now, please understand, the overall audit plan has various aspects such as audit program. Then you have the queries that will be there, that you will take from the management, the responses from the management, your written representations, or how did you allocate the work between the joint auditors. All these will form part of your audit plan. But however, audit plan does not mean that documentation of everything can be at one place. You can segregate the document as in that what is the audit planning, that what is the audit program that you have prepared, how have you allocated the work between your various team members. Now that documentation again has to be made separately, because that will help you to identify what is the accountability of every person. As I've discussed earlier, say for example, if purchase is given to A, now if there is any problem in purchases, I know whom to catch hold of. I cannot catch hold of my entire staff. Audit documentation and audit planning is telling me that the work has been properly allocated to a particular person, and that person is to be held accountable for it. So that is why you need different documentation, though they are part of one main audit plan. But of course, different documentation is required, because different documentation will help you in various aspects of the audit. Right? There is one set of documentation that will be helpful to you when you prepare the audit report. So all these documentations have to be prepared separately. However, they will be a part of one big audit plan. Right? So I hope that solves your doubt. And if there are none any, let's proceed to the next one, which says, what are the disadvantages of an audit program? Disadvantages of an audit program, you have 5 important points on disadvantages of an audit program. Let's understand that. It suffers from certain drawbacks if the work of audit is carried on with the help of a fixed audit program, which means it says कि अगर आप एक fixed audit program follow करते हो तो उसके advantages तो हैं, हम मानते हैं, लेकिन उसके कुछ डिसएडवांटेजेस या ड्रॉबैक्स भी है. The drawbacks can be as follows. The first point is underlined, loss of initiative. The first point is loss of initiative. Okay, see what it says. Loss of initiative. The formulation of a fixed audit program is disliked and discouraged by the clerks. They have to carry on the work in a mechanical way. They cannot offer any suggestions or changes. Thus, they lose their initiative in their work. So the first point is that because you have a fixed plan, if someone wants to go out of the way and check something different, many times the audit program does not allow that. The reason being that they have a fixed structure in which the audit is to be conducted, which means that everyone knows कि एक fixed structure दिया हुआ है, क्योंकि एक fixed structure दिया हुआ है, हमको वही follow करना है, हमारे inputs की यहाँ पे जरूरत नहीं है, which means there is loss of initiative. People do not come up front and initiate new methods of conducting the audit. That is your first drawback, which is loss of initiative. Look at the second point, which says want for flexibility. The audit program tends to become rigid and inflexible. So sometimes the audit program will be very rigid, that this is the manner in which, or this is the flow in which the audit is to be performed. So it cannot be applied for all types of businesses because they have their different problems and procedures. Moreover, it becomes impractical for conducting the work of audit in the context of changing circumstances. Very important point. And this is a practical problem many a times you will face, that when you began the audit, the circumstances were different. While you are conducting the audit, the circumstances of the organization may change, which may demand a complete change in the audit program. Now, sometimes the audit program tends to become rigid, and the same audit program will not work in the changing circumstances. So again, you will require a change in audit program. It becomes troublesome in these cases to carry on the work smoothly. Next point, not all matters are taken into account. Even if the audit program is drawn up exhaustively, it cannot take into account each and every minute work involved during the course of audit. Of course, that is understandable, that when you have not begun conducting the audit, you cannot cover each and every minor aspect of the audit. When you start conducting the audit, that is when you come to know so many practical aspects. So it says that audit plan is good, but it does not cover all the matters of audit exhaustively. Right? See what it says. Even if the audit program is drawn up exhaustively, it cannot take into account each and every minute work involved during the course of audit. Moreover, it cannot be amended according to the needs of the situation. Next point, it is unsuitable for small concerns. So for small business concerns, it would be unnecessary to prepare such a program. It means that small concerns cannot get the advantages of an audit program. Now, if you're conducting the audit of a very small firm or a very small concern, in those circumstances, you may not practically require an audit plan. So for small concerns, the audit program or the audit plan is not usable or workable. And finally, concealment of incapacity of the assistants. Sometimes inefficiency and careless auditors try to conceal their weakness and defects based on the basis of the audit program. The clerks are engaged with the assigned works according to the fixed program. As such, an inefficient clerk may be escaped on the ground that he has performed his task as per the audit program. Here lies the difficulty in locating the inefficiency of the clerk. Very interesting point. So say for example, if I have for purchase department, if I have allocated A, B and C, so I'm writing it in word for you so that you can properly understand. Say for example, there is a particular assignment, an audit assignment that we are doing, where I've decided that purchase will be checked by A, B and C. Now of this C, say for example, is an inefficient guy, is an inefficient audit assistant. However, the purchase will be completely and properly carried out by A, B and C. When I look at the overall purchase audit, it has been thoroughly completed by A, B and C. But from that, C has worked inefficiently. Now, what the audit program does is it only sees who are accountable for these work and whether the work has been properly conducted or not. In these circumstances, sometimes it becomes very difficult to find out who is the inefficient audit clerk amongst the entire audit team. And the other two, in this case, A and B, will cover up for the inefficiency of the audit assistant C. So in this case, this is also one of the drawbacks of an audit program, that it conceals the inefficiency of a particular audit assistant. Are you understanding? Right. So you have 5 points for disadvantages of an audit program. The first one is loss of initiative. So because the audit program is in a fixed format, no changes usually are not accepted. And because it's a fixed structure, people lose out on the initiative to come up and upfront suggest new methods of conducting the audit. Second, want for flexibility. So sometimes the audit program becomes rigid. In changing circumstances, the audit program cannot be changed. Hence, it becomes troublesome to carry out the same audit work. Not all matters are taken into account. So it is very difficult beforehand that you can estimate every kind of problem that will take place while you conduct the audit and you make a plan for the same. It is only when you begin conducting the audit you come to know about the practical aspects, and that can be taken care of later on and not at the stage of the audit planning. Because you have small concerns as your clients, it becomes difficult to use the audit program for such small concerns. So they do not get the benefit of audit programs. And finally, any inefficient or careless audit assistant can conceal his weakness on the basis of the audit program. The audit would have been carried out perfectly, but it becomes difficult to locate the inefficient audit assistant. Are you understanding? These are your 5 disadvantages of an audit program. Right? Are you getting it? Okay, let's proceed with question number 8, if you're clear with this. It says, discuss the statement that despite of several disadvantages, audit program is required to start an audit. So is audit program really required in order to begin the audit? You have 2, 4, 6, 8 important points based on that. Explain the statement, audit program is required to start an audit. Right, let's understand each and every of the 8 points. It says, despite of several disadvantages, the audit program is required to start an audit due to the following important considerations. First point, the audit program lists down the areas of audit before commencement, right? So let me put it over here. We are doing question number 8, key points. The first key point of question number 8 is that the audit program will list down the areas of audit before commencement. So we can list down the areas before beginning the audit. Right, we discussed this earlier also, that this is one of the important advantages of an audit, that before you begin the audit, you have a list of what areas are to be checked, which means there are very less chances that you will miss out on any of the areas where the audit needs to be conducted. Second point, the audit timing is built therein. Thereby, it becomes a schedule for the audit plan. So it takes care of timeliness of conducting the audit. Third point, the staff that is entrusted with the audit assignment is also specified. It is a planning of resource allocation of the firm. So you can properly allocate the resources. Resource allocation of the firm is possible due to a proper audit plan. Again, let's follow the same method that we follow for big answers. After 3 points, we again revise those 3 points. Then we go to the next 3 points. The first 3 points are, it will list down all the areas before you begin the audit. Timeliness of the audit is maintained because of a proper audit plan, and an audit plan will also help you in the resource allocation of the firm. So if you want to utilize your resources efficiently, you need proper audit plan for each of your audits. Only then you know from where to pick up a person and to assign him another audit. In this way, you are doing optimum utilization of the manpower that you have in your organization. Then you have point number 4, which says it specifies the procedures to be checked during the audit. So it lists down not only the areas to be audited, it also lists down the procedures to be followed. Right now, this also we have discussed earlier. I just quickly revise with you. If I know that I am checking the purchase area, say for example, then I know what should be the audit procedure. Now, audit procedure you will derive at the planning stage when you understand the internal control. Now, I made a dummy internal control for you, and then we discussed how the internal control works. I'll again repeat that. So, whenever I have to check whether the purchases have been properly accounted for and have been properly conducted or not. In that case, I will first verify whether the purchase order has been raised. The purchase order has been raised to the approved vendors. 3 quotations have been called for. The quotation that meets your financial requirements and the technical requirements should be selected. After that is selected, at the security gate, you will do physical verification, means you will count the number of units that have arrived versus the delivery challan. Then that will go to the QC department. Quality control should be verified. So on the bill, the quality control stamp should be there, which proves that a quality control check has taken place. After that, it goes to the stores department, and it has been properly stored over there. Then the entire bunch of documents goes to the accounts department. There we again cross check the quantity with the delivery challan in the bill, the quantity in the bill and the delivery challan. We also compare the rates assigned in the bill and the rates that were quoted to us earlier. The rates of the quotation and the rates of the original bill should be the same. And then finally, after the credit period is duly completed, you get the check ready and it is duly paid from the accounts department. This is the entire procedure that you follow for purchase. Now that also procedure we are listing down when we prepare the audit plan. So it not only lists the areas that you will the areas in which you will be conducting the audit, it also specifically is listing the procedure that you will apply in every area of audit that you have. We also discussed one area where it was talking about the production department. So what happens in the production department when the sales team is getting the sales order? That sales order comes to the production department. The production department first comes to the stores department. The stores department will say that we do not have this in stock, which means it needs to be manufactured. Then it goes to the production team. The production team will then decide that okay, this much raw material will be required. So they will send a document known as MRN, which is the material requisition note. Based on that, the stores department will issue the material. Right? When the stores department will issue the material, they will give a material issue slip or a material issue note. So the manner in which the stock moves in the company or in the organization is also to be documented, and that is also one of the aspects that the auditor will have to check. So this is the meaning of list down the procedures to be followed. Let's go to the next point. As the audit work is split into various elements of procedures to be performed, the audit program acts as a guiding chart and a checklist during the performance of the audit. So it helps you as it works as a chart and it works as a checklist while you conduct the audit. Sixth point. Since the staff is in charge of each work is specified and they sign the performance, it extracts responsibility from the audit assistant. This is something that we've been discussing from the first day we began this standard, that accountability can be imposed based on an audit program. You can hold your staff accountable for any work that you have allocated to them if you have a proper audit program. Okay, let's quickly revise the first 6 points, then we go to the last 2. The first point says this will list down the areas before beginning the audit. Second, it will take into account the timeliness of conducting the audit. You can have proper resource allocation of the firm if you have a proper audit plan or a program. It will list down the procedures that you need to follow. And finally, you have the chart and the checklist ready with you to conduct and verify the audit. And finally, then you have the accountability. So you can hold your staff accountable for whatever area they are conducting the audit. The next point is The working papers of the audit staff can be reviewed against the audit program, which helps as a base for reference of evaluation of performance before reporting on the financial statements, which means you can review the work based on your audit plan. So reporting, just before reporting, you can properly review the entire work based on your audit plan. And finally, it also helps in preparing a diary for the performance and plan, and also base for billing the clients for the time and manpower involved. So it keeps a record for performance and also helps you in billing the client. So if there is any change in the scope and if it is properly documented, it will help you at the time when you bill your client. Are you understanding? There are 8 important points which says that why audit program is required at the start of the audit, because of 8 important reasons. The first point is it will list down the areas before beginning the audit. Second, timeliness is maintained for conducting the audit. You can have proper resource allocation of your firm if the audit is thoroughly planned. Then you have, it lists down the procedures to be followed, the chart and the checklist. It acts as a chart and as a checklist when you conduct the audit and review the audit. It holds accountability for your firm. So because every person is allocated one particular area, you can hold that person accountable if you have a proper audit program. Then you can easily review the work. You can, based on the audit plan, just before reporting, you can just quickly have a look whether all the areas have been covered and what are the critical points that need to be a part of your audit report. And finally, you can record the entire audit plan. You can check the performance, and this will also help you in billing your client. Are you understanding? That brings you to the end of question number 8, that why audit program is required to start an audit. Fine, okay. Let me do question number 9. After I do question number 9, I can see 3 doubts on the chat box. So I will go to that just after I finish question number 9, which will also mark the end of SA-300. Right. So let me quickly just explain to you question number 9. It says describe a set of instructions which the auditor has to give to his client before starting of the actual audit. Okay, again, not that important a question, but a question worth understanding, because this question can be asked to you in the context of a different chapter that we're going to do later. However, as of now, you have to only understand the question that it says कि auditor को client को audit शुरू करने से पहले क्या क्या instruction देने चाहिए. मतलब हम कल audit करने आ रहे हैं, तब तक ये चीजें तैयार रखना. तो वो चीजें क्या है जो हमें we have to tell them to keep prepared at the client's place before we conduct the audit, right? So the question is, what instructions will the auditor give to the client before we actually start the audit? Are you understanding? Right. So the question has 10 important points, right? So question number 9, we have 10 key points. So let's note that as well. I hope you all are noting these points with me. They will be helpful to you on the last day of the exam. Key points, question number 9. First, the account should be totaled up and trial balance and final account should be ready. So trial balance and final accounts should be ready. ऐसा नहीं होना चाहिए कि ट्रायल बैलेंस टैली नहीं हो रहा तो कोई बात नहीं, छोड़ दो, कल ऑडिटर आने ही वाला है, उससे करवा लेंगे. That is not really the work of an auditor. Preparing books of accounts is the responsibility of the management. Conducting audit on the books of accounts is the responsibility of the auditor. So please bear this in mind that trial balance, final accounts should be ready. ऐसा नहीं चलेगा कि ट्रायल बैलेंस टैली नहीं हो रहा तो छोड़ दो, कल ऑडिटर आके करेगा. That's not our responsibility. That's your first point, that trial balance and account should be ready. Second, all your vouchers should be arranged serially, right? मतलब अगर मुझे अप्रैल मंथ का वाउचर देखना है तो ऐसा नहीं होना चाहिए कि ये पूरा बंच है, आप इसमें से जून का खुद निकाल के ढूंढ लो. That's not your work. all the vouchers should be serially numbered, so that if you want to check voucher number 160, you can easily locate that. Otherwise, you realize a lot of time of the auditor will be wasted only in locating the vouchers, right? Then your entire audit plan will be disturbed because you didn't anticipate all these kinds of problems to arise during the audit plan. So you have to clearly instruct them that please prepare all the vouchers and arrange them serially. We want them serially numbered in a proper file so that we can locate them as and when required. Third point, schedule of trade receivables and trade payables should be prepared. So your list of debtors and creditors should be prepared. When you ask for the list of debtors and creditors, they should be in a position to provide it to you. They cannot say कि कल देंगे, परसों देंगे, 2 दिन बाद देंगे. Again, that will disturb your audit plan. You have to be very clear that these are all important schedules and we need them on timely basis. Fourth point, schedule of outstanding expenses, prepaid expenses and accrued income should be kept ready. So various other schedules should be kept ready before you conduct the audit, because these are your basic schedules that you will prepare, you will need when you conduct the audit. So basic schedules of your prepaid expenses, your expenses outstanding, your accrued income should be kept ready. The fifth point says a list of bad and doubtful debts should be prepared. So a list of bad and doubtful debts should be prepared. This will ideally help you to find out the provision that you need to create for the BDR. Then you have schedule of investment should be prepared. So we need a proper investment account which will help us comply with accounting standard 13. So if we have a proper investment account, we can find out how have the investments been recorded, whether there is any addition or sale in the account of investments, and of course the most important thing, how have you classified your investments. So you need a schedule of investments to be prepared. Next is certified list of goods returned to be prepared. So a list of goods that have been returned and its documentation should be prepared. Next, you have point number 8, statement of permanent capital expenditure is to be prepared. So your permanent capex statement should also be ready. Statement of permanent capital expenditure should be prepared. That is also required when you conduct the audit. Then schedule for deferred revenue expenditure is to be prepared in order to verify whether the schedule of this schedule of deferred revenue expenditure is also very important to understand. That deferred revenue expenditure schedule is important to identify that only expenses that are allowed to be deferred by an accounting standard should only be deferred. No other expense can be deferred now. So deferred revenue expenditure, a schedule is needed. And then you have point number 10, the name and addresses of managers and other officers should be kept ready. So name and address of your managers and other officers should be kept ready. Now this is required. Why? Because of two reasons. One, if you know the names and the addresses of the officers and managers, you can easily decide who is a related party, who is not a related party. First point. Second, if you want to know who is responsible, who is taking care of the accounts department, who is taking care of the cash department, who is taking care of the bank books, then of course you should have a proper list which mentions that. So this is again important from the auditor's viewpoint, which means that there are 10 important instructions that the auditor will give before beginning the audit, right? Which are those 10 points? The first, trial balance and final account should be kept ready. Vouchers should be serially numbered. Debtors and creditors, a proper list should be prepared. All the schedules, including prepaid expenses, accrued income, everything should be kept ready. A schedule for bad and doubtful debt should be kept ready. Investment account should be prepared thoroughly. And the list of goods returned should be prepared. Statement of permanent capital expenditure should be done. Deferred revenue expenditure, a proper schedule should be prepared. And the name and addresses of the managers and officers should also be maintained. Are you understanding? Fine, that brings you to the end of SA 300. Right now, I have three doubts. Let me first address those three doubts and then we proceed to further doubts if you have. The first doubt says that audit strategy is the base of audit plan. Then why do we document it separately? I think I have already answered this question to you. I hope, Spruha, your doubt is solved. Then the next doubt is that is the auditor required to maintain all documentation even after the audit is completed? Yes. So the auditor is required to maintain documentation for 7 years after the audit is conducted. Now, if you recall SA-230 audit documentation, we have already studied this, that working papers are the property of the auditor and the auditor has to maintain their documentation for 7 years. So all the audit working papers are to be maintained for 7 years. So I hope, Ishita, that solves your doubt as well. Sir, can you give any example of changes in circumstances? Okay. So when you began planning the audit, the books of accounts and looking at the past history of the client, there were no reasons where you would feel that the financial statements would be misstated. Now, when you began conducting the audit, you found a big fraud in the sales area. So there were dummy sales that were recorded, that were wrong sales that were recorded in the books of accounts. So what you observed was that there is a huge fraud in the sales books of accounts that you saw. Now earlier, the situation was different. There was no fraud. So the audit risk was less and you were conducting a regular audit. Now, when you have conducted the audit and you have found at the initial stage that there is a huge fraud in the sales department, then it will arouse a suspicion in your mind that there will be or there may be such frauds in other areas as well, which means the circumstances, the situations have now changed. And now, in the new situation, you cannot continue to follow the old uh, you cannot continue to follow the old audit plan. You need a revision in the audit plan. So this is the example of a change in circumstances of the organization. I'll give you another example. Suppose if we were conducting the audit in a regular manner. Now suddenly a new law has become applicable to us. Again, there is a change in circumstances. Now when the situation is changing, you cannot continue with the old plan. You need a new revised plan. And now amidst the new revised plan, you again have to prepare the entire audit plan from scratch. So this is the example of a change in circumstance. Right? I hope, Aman, that solves your doubt. I have one more doubt, which says in the last point, even of question 7, if there wouldn't have been audit program and the work is simply divided among different auditors, then also it wouldn't have been able to find out who is accountable. Then why is it a drawback of audit program? Okay. Now what happens is sometimes what happens if you look at from organization of commerce viewpoint, right, which you studied, I'm sure in the 11th standard you studied that. It says that you need to keep your staff motivated at all times. Only then they will give you proper performance. Now, if say for example in my example A, B, and C, B and C are inefficient, only A is working, still the audit is getting conducted properly, yes. Still the audit objectives are obtained, yes. But A will not be motivated to work because out of three, only one person is working, and the entire burden on the work comes to A, which means I understand it is accountable. I understand both points are same. But if we divide the work in such a way that in purchase also, purchase of goods up to 50,000 value, A will check. Over 50,000 value, B will check. And purchase of assets, C will check. Now it becomes a more specific allocation of work. Now, if you keep a more specific allocation of work, then in this case, you will be easily able to eradicate that drawback of an audit program, that you cannot identify inefficiency. Why? Because if any problem takes place which exceeds 50,000, then I know that B is to be held accountable for. If it is within 50,000, then A is to be held accountable for. And if it is in terms of assets, then C is able to is accountable for it, which means you hold individual accountability. Now, in that case, the drawback can easily be removed. Right? I hope, Spruha, that solves your doubt as well. Please let me know if it is clear. Fine. Anyone else who has a doubt? If you have a doubt, let's. Are there any more doubts? Have you all understood SA-300? Right, let me know if you all are clear with SA-300. Then we proceed. Have you all clearly understood SA-300? If you're done so, let me know so that we can proceed to the next standard on auditing. Okay, I have one doubt. Point 3 of disadvantages. Okay, disadvantages, point 3, last line. Not all matters are taken into account. Last line. Moreover, it cannot be amended according to the needs of the situation. Okay, which means that when an audit plan is prepared initially, all points are not taken into account at the same time, at the time when you plan the audit. When the audit commences and when you proceed with the audit, a lot of things come to your knowledge at that time. So then you adjust your methodology of conducting the accounting, right? You cannot then again amend the audit plan. That will again take a lot of time. So rather than amending, what you do is you look at the situation and conduct the audit in that manner. So that is also one of the disadvantages of an audit, that if this point was there initially, then one, say for example, if there is a problem in if there is a mistake in purchase, then there is a mistake in creditors, and there is a mistake in input GST as well. Now you have to understand that one particular aspect can have repercussions in different areas. Now, when it has an impact on different areas, sometimes it becomes difficult that when you amend the plan at the last stage, whether you're covering all the important areas or not. So that is why it says all matters are not taken into account. And because all matters are not taken into account, sometimes at the last minute you need a change in the plan, and sometimes it even does not become easy for you to amend the plan as per the need of the situation. So in that case, you just have to adjust your plan accordingly, because it is difficult to change it at the last moment. Right? I hope, Dhara, that solves your doubt. I hope that solves your doubt. Okay, one last time I'm explaining your point once again, Spruha. If you pay attention, I think you'll be able to understand. You are saying why. Your question is, if there wouldn't have been an audit program and the work is simply divided amongst the different auditors, then also we wouldn't have been able to hold the staff accountable. Now, please understand this. What is the meaning of holding your staff accountable? The meaning of the word holding your staff accountable means you know who is allotted specifically which work, and then you can hold that person accountable for that work. Now, if I say that purchase is handled by A, B, and C, it may so happen that B and C are inefficient and A is working alone, which means B and C ki inefficiency is not being able to trace. Now, I will tell you what kind of plan will help you trace the inefficiency. Say, for example, the same purchase department I divide between A, B, and C. A will check purchase of goods up to rupees 50,000. B will check purchase of goods in excess of 50,000, and C will check purchase of assets. So if this way the work is divided, which means I am giving individual responsibility to each audit assistant. Now, when I'm giving individual responsibility to each audit assistant, now tracking the efficiency of each audit assistant becomes very easy. And that is the point that they're trying to put, that if you simply make an audit program and allocate the work, Sometimes it does not solve the purpose. If you have specific allocation of work in the audit, then definitely this disadvantage is not there. This is no longer then a drawback of the audit program, right? I hope that is now clear. Okay, fine, we are done with SA-300, and since you have no more doubts, take a 5 minutes break. It is 4:30 right now, so I will now see you back at 4:35 with a new standard on auditing. So take a 5 minutes break and then we continue.